जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदना जय ब्रजजन रंजना जय ब्रजजन रंजना यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So thank you very much for having me by to Scarborough, have your association and share some information on the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. So today's class will not cover the entire Bhagavad Gita, but to give a little synopsis, or maybe the main essence of Bhagavad Gita, and just touch on some themes in the Bhagavad Gita. But presentation is based with the use of technology, so I'm going to almost wait for the projector to appear so we can get into the class properly. But in the meantime, if you can hand Bhagavad Gitas out, I'm going to need them for the class, please. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So, Bhagavad Gita may be, to some, a river of blood. It may be looked upon by some communities as a very violent exposition, or very violent influence by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, trying to encourage his disciple Arjuna to engage in what we call a very bloody warfare. Even Arjuna addresses this question of the bloodiness of the battle. Why do you want to engage me in such a bloody war? So that could be visualized by some non-devotees as God being an unmerciful God, a God that's very callous, that wants blood. How can God be so cruel to see the slaughter of his own creation? That may be so to some eyes that see this, and especially when we find that the troubles we had in Moscow and Russia, with them wanting to ban the Bhagavad Gita by these very ultra-right type of Christian leaders, quoting Bhagavad Gita as being very, very destructive, or trying to support ideas of violence, uprising. Because actually, Krishna, as talking to Arjuna, is rebellious against the king, Dhritarashtra, saying we have to fight this one, go against the king and his authority, and take over this kingdom and re-establish righteousness. So the Russians were seeing this as a very violent type of faith that's going to be introduced in Russia, which obviously had a horrible background themselves, with Ivan the Terrible and all the other czars before him, creating so much of atrocities, Stalin, etc. So what to speak of Krishna's different point of view as opposed to Stalin and Ivan the Terrible. So that may see as a river of blood. But to Arjuna, this is a river of nectar. Arjuna implores Krishna later on in the Bhagavad Gita by saying, please tell me more. I cannot get enough of this nectar. And we know that the tongue is used to, nectar and tongue are associated, not the ears and tongue. But in this case, Arjuna is using his ears to receive nectar from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Like that. So one can see the Bhagavad Gita as a river of nectar. And if you're a non-devotee, you may interpret the Bhagavad Gita as a river of blood. So it's just a matter of where your consciousness lies. So anyway, Bhagavad Gita is divided into essentially three components. The first 6 chapters, and then we have the middle 6 chapters, and then the end 6 chapters. The first 6 and last 6 chapters are virtually like God for a king that's traveling on a long distance on a road to some destination. You have God set in front of the king, and you have God set at the back of the king. Because the most precious commodity is the king and his entourage, which is situated in between the protective guards. So when we see Bhagavad Gita, we see that it is protected by the first 6 chapters, which is essentially knowledge, and last 6 chapters, which is summarization, and middle 6 chapters, which actually bear the confidential knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita itself. With chapter 9 being the most confidential of all chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. And the most confidential verse in the Bhagavad Gita is chapter 9, verse 34. So we can start our class by reciting this particular verse as our introductory verse to the class. It's 9:34. Most of you are very familiar with Bhagavad Gita, and this is going to be a breeze for you. So 9:34, the most confidential verse of Bhagavad Gita. Everyone has that page? Text, chapter 9, verse 34.
416. Page number on yellow binder is 416.
Man mana bhava mad bhakta.
Manmana bhava madbhakto.
Manyajinam namaskuru.
Manyajimam namaskuru.
Mam eva isyasi yuktevam.
Mam eva isyasi yuktevam.
Atmanam matparayanaha.
Atmanam matparayanaha.
Manmanabhavam matbhakta. Manyajimam namaskuru.
Manyajimam namaskuru.
Mam eva isyasi yuktevam.
Mam eva isyasi yuktevam.
Atmanam matparayana.
Atmanam matparayana.
Samprabhu.
Manmanabhava madbhakto.
Manyajimam namaskuru. Mamaya yuktevam. Atmanam matparayana.
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Manmanabhava madbhakta.
Manmanabhava madbhakta.
Madhyajimam namaskuru.
Madhyajimam namaskuru.
Mam evyasi yuktevam.
Mam evyasi yuktevam.
Atmanam matparayanaha.
Atmanam matparayana. So we'll go for the word-for-word translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Matmanaha,
Matmanaha.
always thinking of me.
Always thinking of me.
Bhava,
Bhava.
become.
Become.
Mat,
Mat.
my.
My.
Bhakta,
Bhakta.
devotee.
Devotee.
Mat,
Mat.
my.
My.
Yaji,
Yaji.
worshipper.
Worshipper.
Mam,
Mam.
unto me.
Unto me.
Namaskuru,
Namaskuru.
offer obeisances.
Offer obeisances.
Mam,
Mam.
unto me.
Unto me.
Ever,
Ever.
completely.
Completely.
Ever STRC,
Yasyasi.
you will come.
You will come.
Yuktva,
Yukva.
being absorbed.
Being absorbed.
Evam,
Evam.
thus.
Thus.
Atmanam,
Atmanam.
your soul.
Your soul.
Matparayana,
Matparayana.
devoted to me.
Devoted to me.
Translation. Engage your mind
Engage your mind.
always
Always.
in thinking of me.
In thinking of me.
Become my devotee.
Become my devotee.
Offer obeisances to me.
Offer obeisances to me.
And worship me.
And worship me.
Being completely absorbed in me.
Being completely absorbed in me.
Surely you will come to me.
Surely you will come to me.
Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Jai Prabhupada.
In this verse, it is clearly indicated that Krishna consciousness is the only means of being delivered from the clutches of this contaminated material world. Sometimes, unscrupulous commentators distort the meaning of what is clearly stated here, that all devotional service should be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Unfortunately, unscrupulous commentators divert the mind of the reader to that which is not at all feasible. Such commentaries do not know that there is no difference between Krishna's mind and Krishna. Krishna is not an ordinary human being. He is absolute truth. His body, his mind, and he himself are one and absolute. It is stated in the Kurma Purana, as is quoted by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami in his Anubhasya, comments on Chaitanya Charitamrita, 5th chapter, Adi Leela, verses 41 to 48. Dehi videda aham nashvare vidyate kvachit. This means that there is no difference in Krishna, the Supreme Lord, between himself and his body. But because the commentators do not know the science of Krishna, they hide and divide his personality from his mind or from his body. Although this is sheer ignorance of science of Krishna, some men make profit out of misleading people. There are some who are demoniac. They also think of Krishna, but enviously, just like King comes, Krishna's uncle. He was also thinking of Krishna always, but he thought of Krishna as his enemy. He was always in anxiety, wondering when Krishna would come to kill him. This kind of thinking will not help us. One should be thinking of Krishna in devotional service. Krishna in devotional love. That is bhakti. One should cultivate the knowledge of Krishna continuously. What is that favorable cultivation? It is to learn from a bona fide teacher. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we have several times explained that his body is not material, but is eternal, blissful knowledge. This kind of talk about Krishna will help one become a devotee. Understanding Krishna otherwise from the wrong source will prove fruitless. One should therefore engage his mind in the eternal form, the primal form of Krishna, with conviction in his heart that Krishna is the Supreme. He should engage himself in worship. There are hundreds and thousands of temples in India for the worship of Krishna, and devotional service is practiced here. There. When such practice is made, one has to offer obeisances to Krishna. One should lower his head before the deity and engage his mind, his body, his activities, everything that will make one fully absorbed in Krishna without deviation. This will help one transfer to Krishna Loka. One should not be deviated by unscrupulous commentators. One must engage in the 9 different processes of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting about Krishna. Pure devotional service is the highest achievement of human society. The 7 and 8 chapters of Bhagavad Gita have explained pure devotional service to the Lord that is free from speculative knowledge, mystic yoga, and fruitive activities. Those who are not purely sanctified may be attracted by different features of the Lord, like the impersonal Brahmajyoti and localized Paramatma. But a pure devotee directly takes the service of the Supreme Lord. There's a beautiful poem about Krishna in which it is clearly stated that any person who is engaged in the worship of demigods is most unintelligent and cannot achieve at any time the supreme award of Krishna. The devotee in the beginning may sometimes fall from the standard, but still he should be considered superior to all other philosophers and yogis. One who always engages in Krishna consciousness should be understood to be a perfectly saintly person. His accidental, non-devotional activities will diminish, and he will soon be situated without doubt in complete perfection. The pure devotee has no actual chance to fall down, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead takes care of his pure devotees. Therefore, the intelligent person should take directly to the process of Krishna consciousness and happily live in this material world. He will eventually receive the supreme award of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. So we'll have the slide running in a moment. So that's purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. We have to be very careful as Vaishnavas. As we advance, theoretical knowledge or theology, as we make advancements in that area, sometimes on the lower levels of consciousness we may find devotees making mistakes, or something goes wrong in their behavior or something like that. So Prabhupada warns us in this purport, a devotee may experience some fall down, even if he commits the most abominable action. Abhichet Sudachara, he is sadhu eva, he is forever saintly. Sipram, Bhavati, Dharma Atma. That means very quickly he will be placed in correct righteousness. And he attains peace, and he's very peaceful at that. And Kunte Pratijanahi Name Bhakta, Pranasyate. So Arjuna, you are my disciple, you're my devotee. You declare boldly that my devotee never perishes. This is assurance by Krishna that no matter on which part of the yoga ladder he is situated, no matter whatever negative experience you may have, that do not worry, Krishna will always give you protection, and very quickly you'll be situated in proper Krishna consciousness. Dharma Atma, rightfully situated in your proper Dharma. So that's the conclusion on that purport of those two slokas in the Bhagavad Gita. Are we ready? So we may start. Thank you. So all glory to Panchatattva, Sri Krishna, Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. How many of you are familiar with Panchatattva and the personalities on that altar? If you're not, just raise your hand so we can quickly. Okay. I'm going to ask the audience. On the left side, extreme, if it's how is this way, extreme right, on my right, the one personality with the beard, who is that?
Advaita Acharya.
Advaita Acharya, the one on the extreme. And the one next to Advaita is
Lord Nityananda.
Lord Nityananda. And in the center, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu's left,
Srimati Radharani.
Gadadhara, Srimati Radharani. And to the extreme left is Srivas. So that is Panchatattva. If many of you have been to Mayapur, then you'll see the majestic deities that are so beautiful. Extreme. How many of you have been to Mayapur? You are all blessed. Very, very blessed. So I recently did go to Mayapur and I had some service with the deities. Keshava Prabhu from Toronto told me one morning, I want you to please come and we are going to polish the deities. So each day for 5 days, Monday to Friday, they will clean and polish one deity. So I was hoping and praying that I'm here only down, I get the opportunity to get to do Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it so came to be like that. So one morning we went into there, and right where this altar is, there's a section that you go beneath the altar, and you come up. At that time, the curtains are completely closed, and there's about up to 7 devotees working on one deity. So my job was to clean the right leg of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I had to take, they have some kind of a goo there, right? You have to take that and you have to polish the deity, and you take toothbrush and go between all the toes of the deities and clean like that. So thanks to Keshava Prabhu, I had the pleasure of having that seva to clean Mahaprabhu's right leg. And then when I came up, you see Nityananda Prabhu's hand there? So I was standing below the hand, cleaning that right leg. So when I came up too fast, Nityananda conked me with his left hand on the head, So I took it as all mercy, very, very happy. And again, thanks to devotees in the Dham to keep that seva. So that's great. It's a great experience. 5 people or 7 people are working on the deity, each one doing one limb or one part of the body. And within a certain time, it's all complete and all the deities nicely presented. So one day for each day. That is the seva. That's cleaning is taking place. So we'll move on. All glories to Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada. Without his mercy, this Krishna consciousness would not have been spread throughout the entire world. And we are always reading Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada, whose commentaries are absolutely amazing. We are truly, truly indebted to him for all his kindness. So today's introduction to Bhagavad Gita. And we'll quickly move on to the next slide. Now the very first words that are spoken in Bhagavad Gita is, what are the very first words spoken? What is it? Very good. Dharma. The very first word introduced in Bhagavad Gita spoken by Dhritarashtra is the word Dharma. It sets the tone and the foundation for the entire Bhagavad Gita, the theme of the Bhagavad Gita, focusing on Dharma, which is the religious and rightful duty of an individual. Dharma, in that land where religious principles were being performed. And the next word we focus on is Mamaka. That originally the Kurus were one big family, one huge dynasty. But in this situation, we find that Dhritarashtra is introducing a separation of the families, an in-family feud that my sons, what is Mamaka, my sons, and then the Pandus. So there's a separation being introduced, a kind of stage for the battle. We can see this right in this very first sloka. My sons and the sons of Pandu, what did they do? It's no more all my sons. I'm the king, I should be father of all my citizens, but I'm separating one entity from the other. So that's what we find here. And Dharma is the cornerstone of all civilization, because it is only from Dharma that we can introduce Artha. By performing your occupational duty, what is the result of that? Some satisfaction, but more important it is financial reward. Is that correct? Every one of us are going day to day to be engaged in some occupation, not solely for the pleasure of the occupation, but more for its financial rewards, that we can take care of our home and our families and pay the bills. Now, resulting after we Artha, we satisfy our senses, which is calm. And eventually, when we get to a ripe old age, and the body cannot function anymore, all its senses are there, but the body physically is incapable of maximizing, exploiting the senses, we said, forget this body, it's too old now, let's look for some moksha. So Dharma is the foundation of civilization. That is built, everything is built upon Dharma. Then comes Artha, and then we got calm, and then we have moksha. So liberation means different things to different people. To the impersonalist, liberation, there's 5 kinds of liberation you may aspire for: Sajujya, Samidya, Sarsti, Sarupya, Salokya. But devotees of Krishna consciousness and of Krishna are not interested in any one of those 5 types of liberation. Rather, they will try to advance to a higher level of consciousness in establishing relationships with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the mood of Dasya, Santa, Vatsalya, Madhurya, and Shakya. So 5 types. So there's a gradation moving from the 5 kinds of liberation into the 5 kinds of relationships. So when the word Dharma is introduced, we find that Dharma, you have to perform your religious, righteous duty. But where's the instruction in Bhagavad Gita that dictates to us that we have to follow this situation of Dharma? So we have to go to the Bhagavad Gita, all of us, and we can look to verse number 413 in the Bhagavad Gita. I know light is down, unless we have glowworms, we can...
Want to put the light?
Yeah. We can walk with the light on. I think we can do that. Yeah, you can still see, right? Okay, great. Om Ajnanam Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalaka Chakshuramitam Yana Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. I was born in the mode of darkness, ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my humble, respectful obeisances unto you. Now we have the torch light above us. We can work with the torch light of knowledge. So we have 413. Everybody has that? Chaturbanem mayasystam guna karma vibhagasa. Tasya katam api mam vidhi akatam avyayam. Somebody can just quickly read the translation.
According to the 3 modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the 4 divisions of human society were created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable.
Great. So we have Dharma introduced here in the first sloka of Bhagavad Gita. But your Dharma is influenced by 2 aspects from chapter 413. What are they? You have a nature because of your guna and your karma coming from previous births. Every one of us is under the influence of our nature. We have specific natures. Some of us are very aggressive, some of us are passive, some of us will cater to higher academic levels, some of us may have more physical strength, but that is our nature. There's nothing we can do about our nature. We have to accept our nature and act accordingly. And this is an instruction from Krishna that I created these 4 divisions. according to your nature and according to your karma. So accept it, and we move on, and we try to do the best in any one of these situations. So we have the introduction of Varna and Ashrama. Varna and Ashrama. The 4 Varnas are Vaishya, Sudra, Kshatriya, and Brahmana. Right? We have 4. And the ashrams, what are the 4 ashrams? Brahmachari 25 years, Grihastha 25 years, Vanaprastha 25 years, and Sannyas 25 years. Correct? So we have 4 ashrams and we have 4 varnas. So either you are a Sudra, right, in one of the ashrams, right, or you could be a Brahmachari. It doesn't mean you're Sudra, you can't be a Brahmachari. Right? You can be a combination of one or the other. Right? So we have 4 varnas and 4 ashrams. But Krishna is advising Arjuna in this particular battle that he was trying to switch from one varna or ashram to another. He was trying to move from Kshatriya to Sannyas. But actually, what we find that in the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the perfection of renunciation, what is tyag? What is renunciation and what is the spiritual renounced order of life? What is renunciation and what is the renounced order of life? So here's a question posed by Arjuna in the 18th chapter. What is renunciation and what is the renounced order of life? So renunciation simply means do your dharma without being attached to the fruits of your result. That is renunciation. 2. Secondly, the renounced order of life is one who has no occupational duty. He has surrendered all up and is fully engaged in the service of Krishna. But is there a difference between a Grihastha and a Sannyas? This is a very important point. Is there a difference between a Grihastha and a Sannyasi ashram? According to Bhagavad Gita, according to Lord Krishna in chapter 18, there is no difference. Because both are situated in the same levels of consciousness. Both are using the ashram for the purpose of Krishna, Bhakti Yoga. Both are engaged in Bhakti Yoga. They are not different in consciousness. They are just different in ashrams, positions. That is all. So whether you are a Grihastha and whether you are a sannyas, it's the same. Narottam Das Thakur is singing in some of his songs, Grehe Thakur, Vane Thakur, I think it's Bhakti Vinod Thakur, in Gai, Gora Madhusware, Grehe Thakur, Vane Thakur, we're all the same. Narottam Das Thakur is singing in his song, Grehe Be Vanate, you know, Sikoda Mandala Bhumi in that one song, Goranga, what's Dudi Pada, Goranga Dudi Pada, and the song goes on. But in that song, there's a commentary that there's no difference between the Grihastha ashram and the sannyasa. See, Narottam Das Thakur begs us, do not leave your ashram, do not become sannyasi, stay as you are, but just practice devotional service with everything surrendered to Krishna. As the first verse that we opened up with, surrender unto me, give your mind to me, whatever you do, become my devotee, offer obeisances unto me, worship me, man mana bhava, mat bhakta, machaji, man namaskuru, like that. So that is what Krishna, no matter what status, Grihastha or sannyas, we should all be regarded as the same mood, the same levels of consciousness. So let's not be disrespectful to any one of us. Be equally disposed to everyone. Sama, the Pandita Samadarshina, you know, all this Sama, be equipoised. It's about the qualities of a Brahmana. You neither sees gold or stool as different. There's no friend, no enemy. It's always equally disposed. So be equally disposed to everyone. Don't discriminate. We didn't one level of ashram and another. All the devotees here are great. They're all serving Krishna. They all have the same intensity and passion and love for Krishna. Why do you have the center? Each one of you are making a very serious contribution in whatever way you serve. So all should be respected equally. No high and no low. Pandita Samadarshana. You know the Vidya Vinaya Sampane, Brahmana Gavi Hastini, Suni, Chaiva Swapakacha, Pandita Samadarshina. You're looking, even in the elephant, in the tree, in the dog, in the cat, you're seeing the same. Chakshus Divyam. We'll come to that later. But let's move on with this. Short background to the Bhagavad Gita. Two families, the Pandus and the Kurus. One is, the head of one family is King Pandu and the other is King Dhritarashtra. Pandu has 5 sons, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula and Sahadev. Not really his sons, but his sons. And Dhritarashtra has 100 sons headed by Duryodhana. And we have the first verse of Bhagavad Gita opening with the word Dharma. And the first son of Kunti originates from Dharma, Dharmaraj. You find the first word in Bhagavad Gita, Dharma. The first son of Kunti originates from Dharmaraj. So righteousness and religious duty is filtering through this entire Mahabharata. Now, we find, in order to eliminate one section of the dynasty, some aggression was committed by the Kurus. They had given poison to the Pandavas. They had set the house on fire. Most of you know the story. This is just a recap. They were attacking with deadly weapons. They plundered the riches. They occupied the land and they kidnapped. Each one of these actions calls for the death penalty. So there were 6 times warranted the death penalty by all these actions here. You can see in some of these graphics, the one slide on the right about the home, and there was a tunnel that they had arranged and they escaped through that. And then this very central activity where all the Kurus, people belonging to the Kuru dynasty, Bhishma, Drona, were watching. They never gave any protection to Draupadi. Even that would have been the right thing to do. But it's this very incident that Bhima takes 3 vows, and he says that he will kill Duryodhana, he will smash up his legs, his thighs, and he will drink the blood virtually of Dushasana's son, and wipe, with Draupadi's hair, he will wipe the blood of Dushasana's son. Is that right? Like that? And eventually Pandavas are forced into exile. You know, they are robbed of the kingdom by Shakuni and Duryodhana, and they force them to. But when they do return, they have a situation, because they are Kshatriyas, they try to beg Duryodhana, please, can you give us some kingdom? And Duryodhana give us half the kingdom. He said, no. Can you give us something to rule? You know, we are Kshatriyas. He said, no. Not even the size of a pinhead of land you will get from me. So this forced us to the next slide. So Krishna, he tries to engage in some diplomacy, and he knows we are heading for war. And this is going to be a terrible war, and he knows the outcome. As we see in the later chapters of the universal form, where Arjuna is watching this universal, and you can see all parties entering to the mouths of Krishna. The heads being smashed against the feet of Krishna. And you can see, so Krishna knows this is going to happen. But he tries, as a lesson to all of us, that when we are in some daily situation where there's some kind of confrontation, or even with family members, friends at work, relatives, whatever, that we have to engage in some diplomacy to try to resolve a particular situation. And Krishna is setting the example here. He approaches Duryodhana with the mindset of trying to put an end to this upcoming war. But Duryodhana had a plan, and he told Karna, as soon as Krishna comes to talk to us, we will catch him and imprison him. This is what has happened. So that fails. That failed, because Krishna here shows a partial universal form to Duryodhana at this point. Duryodhana expresses his intention of trying to capture Krishna. Krishna realizes his mind, and then he shows his partial universal form to Duryodhana, who gets intimidated by that, and he does not go on with this act of trying to imprison Krishna. So now we go to the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Just before the war, there must be rules of engagement. On what conditions will the war be fought? And upcoming in the next slide, we'll come up with the rules of engagement. The fighting must begin no earlier than sunrise and end exactly at sunset. If one of you can read, or each one can have a turn to read what you see there.
More than one warrior may not attack a single warrior.
Two warriors may duel or engage in prolonged personal combat only if they carry the same weapons and they are on the same type of mount, on foot, on a horse, on an elephant, or in a chariot.
No warrior may kill or injure a warrior who has surrendered.
One who surrenders become a prisoner of war and will then be subject to the protections of the prisoner of war.
No warrior may kill or injure an unarmed warrior.
That is the move.
No warrior may kill or injure. No warrior may kill or injure an unconscious warrior.
No warrior may kill or injure a person or criminal not taking part in the war.
No warrior may kill or injure a warrior whose back is turned away. No warrior may attack a woman.
Good. There's more. For the
No
monkeys.
warrior may strike an animal not considered a direct threat.
The rules are specific to each weapon must be followed. For example, it is prohibited to strike below the waist in mace warfare.
And Matajis can read.
Warriors may not engage in any unfair warfare.
So what we find, they had set the conditions for war. And they're going to be very noble about this, and they want to honor these rules and regulations. But we know that they broke every one of these rules during that war. Every one of them was broken. This is made of high integrity. All were gone. Next slide. Now the Bhagavad Gita, 18 is very specific to the Bhagavad Gita because we find that there are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. There are 18 Puranas. The battle lasted for 18 days. And there are 18 divisions, military divisions, we call Akshahunis, of which the Kurus had 11 and the Pandavas had 7. Now, as very good students of Bhagavad Gita, we know there's 18 chapters. Like the Christians know the Bible and the Mohammedans know the Quran. I'm sure you know all 18 chapter titles for 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. We can start with what's the first chapter? Title.
Observing the armies on the battlefield.
Observing the armies in the battlefield. Chapter 2.
Gita of the contents of the Gita summarized.
Very good. Contents of Gita summarized. Chapter 3. No peeking. Chapter 3. Karma Yoga. Chapter 4. TK. Transcendental Knowledge. Chapter 5. Karma Yoga. Action Krishna Consciousness. Number 6. Dhyana Yoga. Number 7. Knowledge of the Absolute. Number 8. Attaining the Supreme. Number 9. Most confidential. Number 10. The opulence of the Absolute. Number 11. The universal form. Number 12. Devotional service. 13. Nature enjoying consciousness. 14. The 3 modes of material nature. 15. The yoga of Supreme Person. 16. The divine and demoniac. Number 17. The divisions of faith. Number 18. The yoga of renunciation, the perfection of renunciation. Now we know that. But our Bhagavad Gita is coming down in disciplic succession. There are 32 prominent persons that appear just before chapter 1 or the introduction. I'll give you the first one. Krishna. Brahma.
Vyasa.
Narada.
Vyasa.
Vyasa. Madhva Acharya. Padmanabha. Nirhari. Madhava. Aksobhya.
Jaya.
Jayatirtha. Jnanasindhu. Dayanidhi. Vidyanidhi. Rajendra. Jayadharma. Brahmanyatirtha. Vyasatita. Lakshmipati. Madhavindapuri. Ishvarapuri. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Rupa Goswami. Sanatana Goswami. Jiva Goswami. Rangnath Das Goswami. Krishna Kaviraj Goswami. Natham Das Thakur. Vishwanatha Chakravarti. Baladev. Jayadev. And then we have Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaur-Kishore Babaji, Bhakti-Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada. You should know. And these are the main ones. They're not even the whole list. There's tons of them.
last 5,000 years there will be so many.
Yes,
But
so these are the email. So they found in your Bhagavad Gita on one side, and you should know all the other chapters. So we can move on to the Akshayuni. The Akshayuni, this is a graphic, this is some stonework somewhere in India that depicts one Akshayuni that you can find in some temple. And we do the breakdown of the Akshayuni. Each Akshayuni, this was included, 21,870 chariots and chariot riders, 21,870 elephants and riders, 65,610 horses and riders, 109,350 foot soldiers, and the ratio being 1:1:3:5. You got that? 1:1, and the next section is 3 times 21,000, and next section is 5 times 21,000. You have that? If you add 21,870, the numbers in there, you'll come to the number 2187. Add them up. 18. 2187 is? 6561 is? Add them up. 10935 is? 18. That is the magical number of 18 and the Bhagavad Gita. So we'll move on. This is some historical data for you. Anyway, when these armies got together, there was just no blind rushing into battle. They had military formations, and I'm not going to read them all, but some of them was the heron formation, the crocodile formation, the tortoise formation, the trident formation, the wheel or discus. Now it's that wheel or discus, I think that's the one that got Abhimanyu in trouble. It was that formation. And we have a lotus formation, the eagle formation, ocean, galaxy, diamond, box, cart, demon, divine, needle, horn, crescent, and there's more. Oh, that's done? I thought it was 2 slides. But anyway, this is a depiction of the battle in which that wheel formation, chakra formation, which got Abhimanyu into a trap. And once he entered into one aspect of this entrance that was given to him, they closed in on him. And he was unarmed, and they killed him with all the different weapons. So that's one of the rules they had broken in that war. So here's Krishna on the battle. This is a very interesting slide, a very old picture some of you may recognize from those days. Krishna leading riding these horses into battle. And what we find, that Krishna is the charioteer, and Arjuna is the conductor, or the instructor, or giving orders to Krishna. Actually, Krishna controls the horses, and Arjuna controls Krishna. Krishna controls the horses in the battlefield. Arjuna controls Krishna. Krishna controls Arjuna within his heart. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Right? So we move on. Now, chapter 1, as you feel, this is Dhritarashtra, and he's got his great mystic person, Sanjaya, who can inform him as what's happening on the battlefield. Observing the armies. So here we find the entire structure. Now Krishna is trying to advise Arjuna. Arjuna wants to quit. His arms are trembling, his hair is standing on end, and his mouth is drying up, and he can find no reason to fight. So he talks to Lord Krishna. I give up my weapons, and better for me not to fight, better for me to walk away, better for them to kill me if I'm unarmed. And then our Krishna starts to instruct him on the message of the Bhagavad Gita. There's some important aspects of Bhagavad Gita I just want to touch on very quickly, and we should conclude in a short time. There are 4 kinds of people, Krishna tells Arjuna, that do not surrender unto me. And there are 4 kinds of people that are pious, and they do surrender to me. There's 2 slokas, if you go to your Bhagavad Gita very quickly, 7:15 and 7:16. Na mam duksitana muda prapadyante naradam maya aprite gyana asura bhavam ashritaha chatur bhajante mam vida mam is it?
Yeah, Chaturvida Bhajate Mam.
Jnana sutitana arjuna artha jignasa arthati jnana sutitana vishava. So there are 4 kinds. Let's who are the 4 kinds of people that do not surrender? Is the Dukstina, the miscreant, the Muda, the foolish, the one whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and there's one more. Nay, the one's born of atheistic. Now, normally we find our children go to university, and they are very pious children. They study a lot, and you can recognize the difference between your children and non-devotee children. Very, 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 very easy. The danger of higher education is that it can divert your mind from the actual goal of human life. We have to understand what is the goal of human life. You have this body, you're going to go through all the education process, get married, have children, etc., etc. Animals are doing that. The birds are doing that. The ant is doing that. You see the ant carrying a big piece of small, to us it looks small, but to the ant it's a huge piece of grain and carrying it on his back and moving towards its house for its wife and children, collecting food. Same thing we do. Non-different animals, non-different from human beings. Is that correct? But what is the goal of human life? Anyone can answer that quickly. Yes, sir.
In a nutshell, to reestablish your lost relationship with Krishna.
To re-establish your lost, loving relationship with, that is the only purpose that we are here. And fortunately, if you meet a devotee, he'll be able to introduce that idea to you. If you don't meet a devotee or get hold of Prabhupada's books, you may miss this opportunity, human form of life. There are 8,400,000 species of life. 3 million of this and 1 million of that and 2 million birds, etc. 8.4, but you're lucky to get a human form of life, and you're lucky to ascend the ladder in the human structure to come right to the point of a human being and be a devotee of Krishna. That is the highest. There's no higher goal than that. And to re-establish your loving, lost relation in one of those 5 types of ras, Santa, Dasya, Madhurya, Vatsalya, and Shakya. You want us to stop, we can stop.
Your choice.
Because I've got about 5 minutes.
Go for it.
So that's fine.
That's good.
Okay. Now the 4 kinds of people that do surrender to Krishna are the distressed, the artha-arti, the one artha that's seeking wealth, and the one that's inquisitive about what is this, what do they tell us in these temples. And then if you advance a little bit, then you want to know what are the different aspects of realizing God. What is the nature of the absolute truth? The jnani. So the jnani, there are 3 types of these jnanis, so-called. The one type is the Brahmavadi, and they essentially focus their attention on the effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they want to merge into this Brahman effulgence, and thereby think they can lose their individuality by this merging process. But we know from Bhagavad Gita, never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So that individuality is eternal. So even if you think of merging into the Brahma Jyoti, there's no chance that's going to happen. You'll merge into the Brahma Jyoti, you'll experience tremendous bliss for thousands of years, but you will still have to come back to the earthly planet to exit. Have you seen this picture there? You'll find that the Bhum Mandala is right in the middle, but that is a spot that you can only, your exit can only be in the human form of life and only from the earthly planet. You cannot go to the spiritual world. It is another process for advancing from Satyaloka to the spiritual world, but generally speaking, it's the earth and it's the human form of life. So that's one example. So most people come to the temples because they are distressed. They have some financial distress, they have some physical distress, they have issues that they have to deal with. And this is the mercy of God attracting them to Him in this form, because they will not be attracted by intelligence, by jnani. So the other type of jnani is the one, the Paramatmavadi. He meditates on the super soul within the heart and tries to see the 400 Vishnu form in the heart, and eventually he becomes so deluded that he wants to become Vishnu himself. So everything is one. You are one, God is one, and you are God, and all that type of stuff. And the third aspect of Bhagavan is the Bhagavan realization, is to realize that you're the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Godhead is the Supreme Person, and that you are the minute person. And your relationship with God is purely one of service. So anyway, I know you have time for the Aarti, so we'll end now. But thank you very much for attending the class. Thank you. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.